Hello and welcome to the Messed Up the Setups podcast. I'm your host, comedian Michael Halcomb, and today I have the great privilege of having a fellow comedian on the show. His name is Alec McNayr.
Everything seems so messed up, but it's just our setup.
Alec, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm really looking forward to this. So let's just start. Where are you at? Where are you located?
I'm in Los Angeles. I've lived here for almost 30 years, but originally from the Northwest. I was born in Oregon, went to high school in Seattle, then came down here to LA and have not left since.
All right. So how long have you been moving in stand-up circles? I know from some of our interactions, you were sort of in it and then stepped out of it and came back. Is that right?
Yeah. I spent most of my teens, I say, like living two lives, like the Matrix, living two lives. I was kind of a web designer, online marketer, like online marketing guy by day. And then by night, I was pursuing various forms of being in entertainment, being here in LA. I took a lot of acting classes. I did improv. I did the Groundlings. I did stand-up. I did Shakespeare. And then I pivoted to try to be a writer and a producer. I made little web series for this new website called YouTube.com in 2006. And out of that, I kind of got introduced to a couple of studios. I sold a pilot script. And so I kind of had things working, which was cool. And then as I hit my 30s and I wanted to be a grown up and I was married, I had a kid on the way. And I had kind of this like fork in the road where I could either keep doing this like digital freelance creative stuff, which was good, or I could keep trying to make no money as a TV comedy writer. And so I took the first one, which ended up being a great path. That partnership with another guy turned into starting one of the first ever social media advertising agencies. And so we did social media campaigns for like every movie studio, most TV networks. We worked on like 600 movies and TV shows over the course of a decade. And now, really a decade after that chapter closed, I kind of find myself back on stage trying to figure out what my voice is, doing a little bit of storytelling and comedy and just figuring out where that goes now. So yeah, that's where I'm at. So in my new phase, I've kind of been at it. I did my first back at it out of retirement open mic about 14 months ago.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on. So when you said you're kind of leading two lives, kind of like the Matrix thing, I was going to say, yeah, also like some Christians, I know.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Except my life was day and night, Monday through Saturday, and then Sunday.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So you've been back at it for about 14 months. I'm really curious, what was the initial like pull back into stand-up comedy? Like, why that? Like, you didn't have to do it, so why?
No,
why come back?
Most friends of mine are like, who's making you do this? Like, why are you doing that? Because most people don't have a reasonably successful career and then say, you know what? I want to go try hanging out with a bunch of 23-year-olds at open mics that are half my age. Yeah. So I always kind of had this idea that I liked, connecting with people. I liked creating. The reason I got into digital marketing and web design is I just liked making stuff and doing things online. So I always had side projects. I always tinkered with entertainment. I loved comedy growing up. Everything from, I was just telling someone yesterday, my very first comedy CD that I ever bought was Jeff Foxworthy. I could probably do the full You Might Be a Redneck like routine, like start to finish right now from memory from like 30 years ago. If you've ever taken a beer to a job interview, someone yells hoedown and your girlfriend hits the floor. So I love that stuff. And then I was writing some stuff online, trying to figure out like what's my voice. And then a friend of mine said, yeah, you loved entertaining. You loved being on stage. Why don't you go try out The Moth? The storytelling organization. They have events all over the world. They're most well known because they have like a radio hour on NPR globally, but they do events in LA twice a month. And so I went and did that December of 23. And then that went really well. And so then, I had all this bravery and I'd just gotten back from a family vacation to Vancouver, Canada. I saw some funny things I thought were good little bits. And so I signed up to go to an open mic at this bar and just saw like good person after good person after good person. And I was like, you'll do great. And I bombed so hard. It was so embarrassing. I came up with the energy of like, these bits are going to be hilarious. And they were not. And it was really, really bad. In fact, I only feel like now have I mustered back up the confidence after doing it for a year that my stage presence is right, but my writing is up to par. And so I'm kind of like, I don't know. I'm just in a position where I can go and fail at a bunch of stuff. And I've made it a goal last year to get up on stage 20 times last year. And I think I did 17. And this year I'm trying to get up 48 times. So basically 4 times a month on various stages and opportunities. And it's like 3+ months into the year. And I think I'm at 20 already. So I feel pretty good about that. Yeah. So, I'm trying to hold it lightly, but also have some intentionality on like, what is this going to turn into? I don't know.
Yeah. Right. So you've said a few things I want to touch on. I mean, we can go on some great tangents here. So how old are you?
Number one, how dare you? I'm not supposed to ask that. No, I am, how old am I? 47. Yeah, 47.
Okay. So yeah, I'm 44. And I asked this because, you mentioned, go hang out at open mics with a bunch of 20-year-olds, which is so true.
Yeah.
Right. Like and I've heard the statement so many times, it kind of grates on me a little bit, like comedy is a young man's game, and so I'm curious, like from your foray back into comedy, are you ever too old to start doing this or restart doing this?
Well, I want to answer no, because that's the answer that serves me the best. I think the answer is that it depends on what you're looking for. I think had I heard that in my 20s, I would have like full of like achievement and desire, and it could only look like this level of success. And I feel like one of the things that like eventually steered me away is I didn't have, even though I had good things happening, I sold a pilot. I did things that a lot of people never do. I didn't feel like I was going in the right direction. And I wasn't getting the success that I wanted to have. So in my thirstiest or most like unhealthy identity in trying to find external like measures of success, well, the answer is no, because I could very easily compare myself halfway between our ages, I think, is Nate Bargatze. Feel like there's no one bigger right now. And so it would be very easy for me in my worst mental state to say, well, that guy has a 20-year like head start on me, so I'll never achieve what that guy's achieved.
Right.
And so if the measure of success is be as big as Nate Bargatze, which is a stupid goal, well, then no, I couldn't do that. But if the goal is try to figure out what this thing inside me is and try to figure out a way to do, sorry to say art, which sounds hoity-toity, but like, how to make this into something that's meaningful. Well, I think I can find meaning in this and maybe even some financial value in this.
Right.
But am I deluding myself that I think it's going to be like me figuring out how I can be a millionaire at doing this performing thing is by this time a year from now? Well, definitely not. I think I'm real time recalibrating what it means to be quote unquote successful in this and trying to see where it goes and know that like my own path is going to be different than what I see as being successful by other people, and being okay with that.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. And, the financial aspect of it is only one potential marker of success, right? Yeah. Like you, I have a goal. My goal was just simply to get on stage more this year. I didn't have a set number. I've already blown that out of the water compared to, so this week is my 1-year anniversary for doing stand-up comedy.
I love it.
So I've been at it 1 year since January, since the new year rolled around. I've been on stage more in 2025 than I was all of last April through December. So like, it's that's success for me. Right. Yeah. And most of my shows this year have been paid gigs, which has been awesome. Like, so I'm 44 and I'm just getting into this. So there's a little bit of financial success. Yeah, I just did a show, 3 shows last weekend. It was all part of the same thing. And I made $156.
Come on, man. Hey.
So like
$56 more than a lot of people.
That's right. Exactly. So I try I don't like poo-poo on that. I'm not even making fun of it, but it's just like, no, like that's some success. Like it may be relatively small success comparatively speaking, but it is some success. And that's, seeing more paid gigs than not has been nice in 2025 so far. You've also been talking about, like you've said it several times, finding my voice. And I think this is such a big part of comedy. So before I ask about sort of like your voice, because I do this all the time. Like when I'm listening to a comic, this is like one of the first questions I'm asking. What is their persona? Like what is their voice? And those may be two different things.
Yeah.
I have like some philosophical standpoints on voice or voices, but anyways. So like you mentioned Jeff Foxworthy, right?
Yeah.
He's sort of the I don't know, redneck guy voice, or Nate Bargatze's like the dumb Southerner college dropout voice.
Right.
Like, I don't know, if I throw a comedian out there, I'm wondering if you could try to tag, like, pin a voice on them real quick.
Yeah.
We'll play a game here real quick. So, like, I'm gonna say a name. I want to get your perspective on what you think their persona, their voice.
Yeah.
You cool to do this?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Until you like name people that I don't know, and then I have to be like broadcast all over your 17 followers that I don't know who someone famous is.
I'm the 17 followers guy. So Jon Stewart.
Jon Stewart is pointed, thoughtful, liberal champion.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. All right, let Stephen Colbert.
Colbert, warm, unflinching Catholic.
I like that. Daniel Tosh.
Tosh he's a human frat party.
Human frat party. That's brilliant. Okay, let's Cedric the Entertainer, you know?
Cedric the Entertainer is clothes don't fit. He's the longest coat you've ever seen.
Man, that's good.
Wide brimmed hat.
Yes. Dude, so funny. Hilarious.
Well, that's the funny thing is about voice is I think this is what I'm trying to figure out too. Instead of me trying to dictate what I want you to think my voice is, there's a little bit of like midlife crisis in this comment. And so I wonder how you're feeling about this at 44. But part of this whole thing, I think, is this is what a midlife crisis looks like. I'm a full grown man with a loving wife and 3 kids at home, and I'm here at 10 o'clock at an open mic with all of you all. This is what a midlife crisis looks like when you're not buying a Lambo and trying to have an upgrade of your car and your wife.
Dude, it's the poor man's midlife crisis.
It's the poor man's midlife crisis, yeah. And so, it reminds me of this thing that we did back in like acting class in my 20s where I did this class, everyone showed up, and the thing you were told is do not talk to the other people in the class. You go there, you're supposed to be silent, you just show up. And then one by one, every person was invited to go on stage. And all you do is you stand there and then people write notes about what they think about you based on your appearance and demeanor. And then everyone did it. And then you went around a circle and then you got a sense of who do people think that you are based on the stereotypes in their head, who you present yourself to be by your clothing, by your haircut, by all that. And it wasn't to be nasty because, you know, it was a thing where it was a safe space for that. I think there's a little bit of how do I see myself? And then trying to make material that plays off how I think an audience sees me. Yeah. And I think that's a thing that's a little bit in flux for me as I figure out both who I am versus the other people at an open mic in Los Angeles versus how do I want to present myself in my quote unquote art form. And so much of that is
that's
midlife man, right?
Insightful. That's really insightful. I'm wrestling and have been with the same thing, right? Like, so I'm curious how I ask people like comedian friends all the time or people who've seen me perform, how do you perceive me when I'm on stage? And I never really get a great answer. Somebody did say recently, not quite salt of the earth, which I thought was a fun response.
That's great.
Not quite salt of the earth. But yeah, so, and in my own mind, like I see myself or perceive myself as this guy who notices everything messed up and points it out. Like that seems too vague or generic. Mm-hmm. No, like I'm messed up and I point out all this messed up crap about me, but also in the world. Like I notice everything. I don't know why I have a knack for that, but I do. So, I
don't know. One thing, most of my material I've worked on the last year, I try to pull everything from my own life and my own experiences. And I have 3 kids who are 9, 11, and 14. And so I'm in the thick of like being a dad and all that. And one of the things I certainly a ton of open mics are so raunchy. I don't mean to like sound like I'm clutching my pearls, but like it's like so wrong. Certainly I feel bad for mostly dudes in their 20s because they don't have any stories yet.
Right.
Don't have anything to talk about. Whereas I feel like that's one thing I'm grateful for this experience, that I do have a bunch of things to draw on. But I go up and I say, hey, everyone, first of all, it's nice to be twice as old as everyone else here in the room. And I want you to know that I know that this is going to be the most wholesome 5 minutes of the night. So buckle up. And that at least allows the audience to know a little bit about me, a little bit about my vibe, even if they don't know my story. And it gets a laugh on the front. And it shows that I own what I think is the difference between me and who's in the room. And so that's been my way of figuring out how to relate well in that room based on what I think they perceive me to be. And what they certainly will think of me when they figure out, they're like, oh, this dude, everyone else has like daddy issues and talks about like how it's impossible to date and every like crass topic there is. And this guy's going to talk about how much he loves his kids. But at least I own that going in. And so anyway, I'm trying to figure out that dynamic in different rooms.
No, I think you're exactly right. Like that is you beat me to the punch, sort of. Like that is the one definite like leg up that coming into this in your 40s, you have up on like a younger person, right? You have stories. You have a lot more life behind you that you can draw on. Yeah. Yeah. I think
and you do have a better sense of like what your life is and what your life means and the things that you've done and how that like helps define who you are. Because when you're in your 20s, well, if you're lucky, you've had some life and you have something to talk about, but most of your life you're talking about is like dreams of the future of what could be. It's almost limit. And there is a natural limitation to being at this age, at this moment. Like you can't do everything. You know, I mean, when I hear a young man's game, I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of people that I see. They're at every single open mic within 5 miles of where I live and they're out every single night. Well, I can't and won't do that.
Right. Right.
And so how do I turn that thing that feels like a detriment on its face of like, oh, I can't get the reps in? Well, that means I have to work harder to get different types of reps.
Right. So let's talk a little about that. What is do you have a writing routine? Are you sitting down on a certain day of the week at a certain time writing? Does it just whenever you can squeeze in a few minutes?
Yeah.
Does it happen spontaneously? Is it a mixture of all that? What does that look like?
I started trying to write more consistently online about a year and a half ago. And then I opened up an Evernote account, that service where you can take notes and all that stuff. And I've actually done a pretty good job. I was just flipping through it before this call of like, just writing down every little like bit or observation or whatever. And so now I have like 300, 400 like little notes in there about little things I think are interesting. And I actually find that if I can do that, then that's the prompt that I need whenever I do sit down. And I sit down a couple times a week just to like spend some real time trying to make something.
Yeah.
I think I am a little scattered in terms of the types of things I'm trying to create. Like I said, I'm doing like storytelling shows with the Moth, and that's like 5 to 6 minute stories. I just started hosting my own storytelling and comedy show where I had 8 people, both kind of storytellers, comics, come and share on a theme. I hosted that night, but did like 20 minutes worth of like a story in 3 parts. And so, you know, I'm just trying to do a bunch of different things. I'm trying to write this like short film script. And so I'm a little scattered in terms of my output. I think if I was less scattered, I'd be a little bit more focused, but you know, that is what it is. I'm not trying to beat myself too hard over that.
Do you run jokes by your spouse?
I do a little bit. I think that like I think I do a little bit of like, do you think this is funny? Does this work? But mostly I feel like the place where I get most feedback from her is like recanting and trying to draw meaning and depth from my own real stories in life versus like, is this funny?
No, I find my wife to absolutely be the hardest to make laugh. Like she tells me all the time, you're funny. Like you're really funny when you're just talking.
Yeah.
But like when you try to tell me a joke you wrote, like it's not nearly as funny. So she feels like I'm a try hard for some reason when I tell her a written joke.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's probably because you're going and saying like, hey, do you think this thing is funny? And then you read off the page. If you just like nonchalantly just do this thing off the cuff, then like it'd go much better. But you know, it's all in the setup, right?
Right.
Hey,
That's
do you think this thing
point.
is funny? It's definitely not going to come off as funny.
That's such a good point. I haven't even thought of that.
Yeah.
I
just
asked
giving you a little like bless your heart, like, oh, I'll give you some pity cred. But
I told her my wife and daughter were my daughter's like about to turn 18, but
Yeah.
I wrote this joke the other day. We're sitting in the living room and like, hey, do y'all think this is funny? Just, you're exactly right. It's a terrible setup. And I told the joke and they didn't laugh. And my daughter goes, maybe in context.
Yeah,
You
that's
know?
what you're hoping for from a paying audience member. Like, hilarious in context.
So that's stuff. So I do only clean comedy. I'm not vulgar. I'm not crass. I don't cuss. Like,
Yeah.
I get the vibe that you're clean as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about what that's, well, I want to hear like the philosophical reasons behind that, but then also what have the practical outworkings of that been like?
Yeah, I would say I want to present in a way that fits with my upbringing, it fits with my faith. You know, I'm a firm believer that like that 4-letter words won't get you into or keep you out of heaven in terms of like Christian faith. So like, hey, do people swear? Do like the most like faith-filled, like close to God people I know swear? They definitely do.
Yeah.
But if I have a choice about how I want to present myself, and I think I just want it on the side of being cleaner, just because I think that's more closer to who I am and how I want to like be, you know, like yeah. So I'm not too hung up on swearing, but I am pretty hung up on the kind of material I want to do, just because like I'm not a crass dude and I'm not like, you know what I mean? I'm not living a crazy life. I'm not trying to rebel against the system.
Right.
And so that's not the kind of person I am. So I don't want to like pretend like I'm being something I'm not. I think I owe that to my family, both my parents, my own kids, all of that. And so I think that's closer to how I want to be. And I think just even strategically, even before if I take the morality out of it or anything like that, I think there's a huge appetite for people that just want to like, they're not prude, but they want to like go and be a part of an experience that's a safe space for reasonable comedy and experience and depth. This stage show that I produced 2 weeks ago, I said this to the performers that I kind of put in the show. I said, I'm aiming for this show to be PG-13-ish plus, like suitable for like a 16-year-old kid. And I want to avoid the glorification of sex, violence, you know, et cetera, drugs. Although if that's part of your story and that's authentic to who you are, well, you can talk about that, because all good stories have like, you know, valleys and peaks and all that stuff. I just want to like not be glorifying that stuff because that's not helpful. And so I tried to word it in such a way that would be, you know, again, not prudish, not school marm, not judgy Christian-y person, but trying to give a rationale for what audience I think will be interested in this type of show. Yeah. Well, and the evidence is people like Bargatze and his whole crew and that who are just as successful as anyone. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And I appreciate that. I've found it to be challenging to be like the only clean comedian, right? I was talking to this booker that booked me for last weekend, and she was saying, you know, I don't hate the non-clean comedy or the non-clean comedians. She's like, but I definitely prefer the clean comedy. And so, you know, I think there is even on the booking side of things, you know, bookers are often looking for that. And, you know, if you've been around comedy for a while, you're eventually going to hear sort of one of those adages of, you know, well, you're more likely to get booked for corporate if you do clean, or, you know, there's a whole plethora of other places to do comedy that if you're working clean, you have a shot at getting those. Whereas if you're not going to be considered.
Yeah.
So it can open up some other doors as well, but I think it's not without its challenges. I mean, a show I was at recently, comedian was just being vulgar, and even like some of the tags, like the audience laughed at the joke or something like that, and it was about him, and the tag was F y'all, right? Because they're laughing at him, and
Sure.
that F y'all gets a laugh, like a big laugh, and you hear that sort of thing like very often, and I'm like, well, I can't really do that. Maybe I could come up with a cleaner version of that. Heck with y'all or something.
Doesn't work because there's no risk or fear or like, oh boy, I'd never say that. I mean, that's right. Where that laughter comes from.
That's right.
And every single person you and I know would say like, screw you guys. And like, and that's not funny at all, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's like some degree of safe. So I think the place where I'm trying to go is, instead of being, again, like whenever I say vulgar or crass, I feel so like, ooh, like you're so prudish, but like it's the idea of, if I can be extra vulnerable about my own situation or my own issues or problems or phobias or annoyances or any of that, not even just for laughs, but for like catharsis and connection. And
Right.
well, that's where I want to live, because that's where good art and connectivity comes from. And I'm just not ever going to be a person to like go off the rails and make people laugh because of how crass or dirty or whatever I'm willing to go. Because it's just not where I live.
Yeah.
I don't live in that space.
I love that. So it's coming from a place of authenticity, essentially. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just you don't do it because this is not who you are. It doesn't fit with your voice. Right.
Yeah.
No, I love that. I think that's great.
Well, especially
Man,
here in
this
LA,
is-
I feel like there's more inherent risk in me being clean, acknowledging that I'm a Christian, trying to like weave humor into stuff that would be considered wholesome, talking in depth about my own struggles or challenges or whatever. That's the old adage that I follow this guy, Hugh McLeod, he wrote a marketing book called Ignore Everybody. There's this adage in there. He says, don't just stand out from the crowd, avoid crowds altogether.
This is great.
And like, you don't win any points by being like 1% better or different than the crowd. Like, be totally different and be yourself and try to, and so that's the thing I'm trying to figure out.
That's
When
good.
I say my voice, that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, that's great. I
Yeah.
think so. This is fascinating. I've had a shift in mentality in the last 2 months, because there is this, I don't know if it's a pressure, but maybe it is a pressure point in stand-up comedy to find your persona, to find your voice. And then you write from that, you perform from that. But I'm having like this, I don't know, I feel like it's a little bit of a breakthrough that perhaps it's voices, like a plurality. Because like in any given day, like I have like a husband voice, and I talk out of that to a specific person. I have like a father voice. I have like this Christian or theological voice. Like, so I find that I'm moving in and out of different voices throughout the day, and that maybe rather than confining myself to one voice on stage, that it's also like a mirroring of that, just moving in and out of different voices.
Yeah.
With different bits. I don't know. What are your initial thoughts of that?
Yeah, maybe voices is the wrong term. And you actually want to come from, I don't know, it could be like expectations. I mean, if we think about, we've talked a lot about Nate Bargatze. That guy, no matter what show you go to, he's going to talk about his relationship to other people and how he gets himself in trouble from being dumb, right?
Yeah.
He's going to talk about some part of what I would call kind of like his version of Southern culture.
Yeah.
He's going to talk about his wife and how he gets in trouble with her.
Yeah.
He's talking about his extended family and how he either doesn't respect them or they don't respect him. And so there's a couple of different like points of connection or expectations or whatever. And it all comes through the lens of how he sees the world. And so maybe it's just like, hey, there's a couple of different lenses through which I navigate life, and they're connected. They can't be so different, but they have to both be in line with who you are and what you can speak from and where your experience is and how you see the world, but also has to be in line with how you present yourself and how people see you and expect you to be. So I don't know, maybe it's the alignment of like your lens and how you see the world, but also what people expect from you. And when those things touch and align, then you kind of get enough of a Venn diagram overlap that like, okay, I can get enough of this material through because I've found the connection between how I want to talk and how I want to present and how I want to find material and what you as an audience are willing to accept from me based on your snap judgment of me.
Oh, that's helpful. So bringing the voices into alignment, maybe under one umbrella, but then making sure that is also connected to what the audience is. So you brought up Jeff Foxworthy at the start.
Yeah.
Like or at least you used to know what you're going to get from him.
Yeah.
When you go to his show, it's changed. Like he's morphed. Like he doesn't do all the or at least the redneck thing isn't such a big part of his comedic routine today, right? He talks a lot about his faith on stage and
I think the materials changed, but his lens is exactly the same. I'm just like a dumb Southern guy that doesn't like know how the world works. And he plays that angle up that even though he's like definitely a multimillionaire and has traveled the world, is very successful, he could have certainly changed his accent and moved to New York and only sipped like cosmopolitans, but he's stayed in his lane of like who he grew up to be, which I think is, I don't know him and wouldn't pretend to, but it seems like he stayed in his lane, both because that's who he is, who he values himself to be, who probably the people in his life value him to be, but also it's who fans expected him to be. And so when he shows up, he can't like do a full like left turn.
Right.
It's like, it's like going to a band where like if they do stuff that's totally different than what you liked before, you're like, I love that.
Right. Interesting. So what are you doing? We'll talk about this and then sort of wrap this episode up. What are you doing to sort of pinpoint your persona? Like, how are you doing that? How are you narrowing it down or nailing it down?
I feel like I am trying to write a bunch of different material around my own midlife crisis, my own parenting. I feel like the most material I ever get is from when like my family goes on vacation. And so we went to Disney World last Thanksgiving. And I think I probably came up with like, once it all gets going, I think I'll probably have 15 minutes of material just from Disney World.
Excellent.
And so, I'm just trying to scope it from my own real life. The thing I haven't done a good job of doing is finding material from my work or corporate life or building a business, because it kind of all feels too successful. Because I built the business, it really did well. It worked with lots of clients. We sold that business. And so it's kind of all too high status for comedy. But I think where I've mined it really well for catharsis, it's been really meaningful, especially as I dig into the idea that like, I kind of got everything that you might want that an entrepreneur would want. I got accolades, awards, financial provision, attaboys. Like I've known for doing these things in the advertising space. And yet none of that was really made me happy. And so the more I talk about that, the more people to me, come out of the woodwork, especially like men in their 40s who kind of feel stuck in a profession of their own making, that even though they are successful by a bunch of different measures, they're like, that's exactly how I feel. And so that's been fulfilling, but that's not comedy gold.
Yeah, dude. I mean, that's really insightful. And I'm thinking like, it is certainly like several angles to come at that from, like, even to the point of like I've been successful over in this space, like CEOs have given me awards, but my kids don't respect me, or that sort of like angle there, or that's one way. But I really get what you're saying. Like I've been a theologian or a Bible scholar most of my professional life, and same, I've published books, I've presented at conferences, like I've gotten awards, and like at this point in my life, even though I'm a professor of Bible and writing, like it's like, who cares?
Right.
Like who really cares? And I'd much rather spend my time laughing at this stuff and making fun of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's fun and interesting.
Well, we certainly have chosen directions where all the previous accolades really don't mean anything.
That's true. Yeah.
I did an open mic, and again, it was one of those situations where the room was probably like 25 people waiting to go up, everyone in their 20s, like 24 dudes and one girl. And it was kind of just like, oh boy, these guys are lost. And I felt this pang of like, hey guys, like it's going to be okay. Like take it from me. But what I did, instead of like I tried to like do a thing where I might have like an honest moment about how painful your 20s are, but don't worry, it gets better, fellas. But you do have to try. But what I did was, unfortunately, I think I made myself, or tried to make myself, a vision of what their life could look like. And they don't care about that at all. I try to joke about like, oh, it's interesting to be here amongst all of you, because I look out and I just see wave after wave of delinquent student loans. I feel like I am the voice of manhood future, come to tell you what it looks like when you can actually experience the real love of a woman. Those are funny in their setup, but I just look like a jerk that night. So it didn't work there. And I was just trying to experiment with something, but it's where I learned that exchange we had on Facebook about like, keep that status low, my man. That's where I like picked that up because I definitely read that room wrong. And then it just ruined the whole thing because I was like trying to like punch down on the people that are here that are doing the same thing as me. What's stupid? And that's not who I'm trying to be, but I'm glad that like, I'm glad that wasn't filmed and put on stage and you know what I mean?
But there has to be a real part of you like deep down that's like, man, I just wish I could give these kids hope, right? Like, and at the same time, tell them, no, you actually do have to work for something, right? Like, it sounds like that's like a real part of where you're coming from, or am I wrong?
Yeah, I like doing that. I'm not sure that that's where I want my performance
I got you. Yeah.
points to be, but interpersonally, I love being an encouragement to people and talking to young folks and
Gotcha.
yeah, I love doing that. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's insightful. I mean, it's good to recognize like, oh, I messed up here. I read the room wrong here. I did this. I took a misstep here, miscalculated. I think having the ability to be honest about those fails is really important. But,
Yeah.
man, this has been a good conversation. Super insightful, man. So thank you for sharing your journey, your learnings, and educating us a little bit.
We're doing it.
Yeah, man. Well, and to those of you watching, do you have a website? Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can kind of find all my things at AlecMcNayr.com. I'm pretty active on Substack and Instagram, and that's about it.
Okay. So I was trying to pull up AlecMcNayr.com here so we could see the website and do a little promo for you. So
That's right.
there you go. Yeah, this goes right to Substack.
That's my Substack. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. You do the same thing as me. Just use your domain there. Excellent. Yeah. So lots going on here. Go check out AlecMcNayr.com. It'll take you to the Substack and subscribe there. You can subscribe for free, or it can be a paid Could you have paid subscribers?
Yeah.
Can you do that? No,
it's all free.
Nope. It's all free. So you can subscribe for free. And, every time a post goes live, I think it'll shoot you a message to the inbox. And then, there's other things that you can follow there. So yeah, check that out. And your West Side Story Club, you have like a schedule where people can go?
Yeah, the last one was March 23rd. The next one is June 1st in West Side, Los Angeles. And you can go to westsidestoryclub.com and find me in all the same spots. It's YouTube. I have an email list on Substack and Instagram there as well.
Excellent. So follow Alec on the socials and go subscribe at his Substack. That'd be great if you did that. Show him some love. But we're going to stop episode 1 here and keep an eye out for episode 2, because we're going to talk more. And in that episode, I was going to bring a joke, going to sort of like tell us the story behind it. We'll see if we can punch it up a little bit. Then we'll do some making up of jokes on the spot, which is one of my favorite things. So thanks for watching the Messed Up to Setups podcast. Go to MichaelHalcomb.Live. You can subscribe there. The podcast is on Spotify. The video form is on YouTube. So do all those things. You can find me on social as well. We're going to stop here and say we hope that helps.
It's all messed up, yeah. Everything's messed up. We're going from this mess up to the next setup. Everything seems so messed up, but it's just